I feel like I was in a unique position on the show. I I it did like such a tiny thing on the original series. So I got to enter into this world like with like totally fresh eyes. So like when I'm hunting stuff down for the artist, like every other day I'd be like, you guys did that? And you did that? And wait, you have a horse character that loves to party all the time? And you have like Gary? I learned all about Gary. Like it was just so much stuff that I was uncovering and learning for the first time. And it was like really, really fun.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another regular show Wiki interview. Today's guest originally worked as a background designer for the season 7 episode California King and has since returned for regular show The Lost Tapes, where she is now acting as the assistant art director. Everybody, please welcome Cheryl Johnson.
Thanks so much for having me, Jordan. It's great to talk to you.
We'll start from the very beginning. Going back, what was the initial thing that got you interested in working in the arts or just animation in general?
Yeah, that goes way, way back. I've been drawing pretty much ever since I've been able to hold a crayon. So like age 2 or 3, I was always very artsy and crafty, lots of drawing, lots of painting, lots of craft. Always loved art in school. And in a lot of my free time, I was doodling and filling sketches. And so I've always been really artistic. And I also always loved animation and cartoons as a kid. Like, watched a ton of Nickelodeon and Disney Channel, and all that stuff was like such a huge hit in our household. Um, so I always knew that I was interested in doing animation or working in cartoons or even comics or something like that, but I didn't quite know for a long time how you go about doing that. And then when I was around 14 or 15, my family and I, we took a trip to Disneyland here in Southern California, and they had an exhibit of all this concept art that artists had done for some original Disney feature films like Peter Pan, Little Mermaid, Dumbo. So all these like beautiful like charcoal sketches and pastel sketches and paintings. And I saw that and I thought, see, somebody does do artwork like that for animation. So the minute I saw that, I was determined to figure out, okay, how do I get into that side of things? So when I graduated high school, I scoped out a few different art colleges and I went a couple of different directions. Initially, I went to a smaller school in the Bay Area where I was doing some like CG stuff. And I did that for a couple of years, but it's very technical and tedious and wasn't like quite my jam. I still wanted to do more like actual drawing and painting. But I had a better idea at the time of like how to get into that. So then I ended up going to Art Center in Pasadena and I went into their illustration program with an emphasis on entertainment design. And after about 4 years at Art Center with lots of drawing and painting and practice, I was able to connect with people in the industry and then get into animation. And then funny story about that is the person who got me into the industry is actually Paula Spence, the art director on the regular show series. So she's been my connection to not only the animation industry, but also regular show. So that's how I got to be a part of the epic legacy that is regular show.
Well, so when you got into the industry, like what was your first gig and how did you find it getting into the role for the first time?
hmm Yeah, my first gig was in animation, was working as a background designer on Be Cool Scooby Doo at Warner Brothers. And that was in 2014. So that actually happened through Paula. So Paula was my neighbor when I was going to Art Center. And I knew that she worked at Cartoon Network. And when I was close to graduating, I showed her my portfolio and she really liked my work. So she kind of took me under her wing and she brought me into Cartoon Network, and then she introduced me to another art director there, Sue Mont, who did a lot of work on Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends and art directed a whole bunch of things over the years. And then she introduced me to this guy, Richard Lee, who was art directing Be Cool Scooby Doo over at Warner Brothers, and they needed some background designers. My portfolio was strong enough that they were like, sure, let's bring in this really green artist and see how she does. And the rest has been a whirlwind animation career ever since then.
onto a regular show, you did, of course, as mentioned, work on just one episode of the original series. So, kind of, what was the experience with that, and how did you get onto regular show initially?
That was, again, that was through my connection with Paula. So Paula and I have always kept in touch throughout my career. And Paula's like such a good advocate for young artists. And when she needed some freelance on regular shows, some background design freelance, because what happens in animation, I'm sure you're aware, is occasionally you'll get an episode that's just really, it's a lot of work, and you can't just do it with the in-house team. So that one, California King, was this really ambitious, like labyrinth inspired episodes, so they were going to need freelance help. So she reached out to me, and I was like, "Oh heck yeah, I'd love to do some pencil drawings for you guys on regular show." So I got to do a chunk of that, and it was really fun because these days almost everything is digital, but at the time, regular show was all about doing it with pencil and paper. So I do my roughs digitally, I print those out, and actually draw them with an HB drawing pencil and scan them in and send them over. It was really fun. And also, I'm a huge Labyrinth fan. I don't think she knew that, but the minute I saw that animatic, I was like, oh, I love this. This is so great. So yeah, that's how I got started on a regular show.
It's funny, I was just before the interview, I was going through that episode, and it's like, it's hard to I don't think I've ever kept count of how many backgrounds are in each episode, but it's just looking at like everything, and obviously you've got all the different angles of everything. Um, I love just the general look of that episode, just with it being, because again, it's a labyrinth, but it's also a dump. That's always been a special, especially because I'm a big beyond labyrinth, a big David Bowie fan. So it's been a gem of an episode to always go back to.
Yeah, it was so fun to work on it. I remember specifically drawing this like cave of TVs, all these like busted up TVs. Like that one in particular, I remember sitting there drawing it out on with pencil and like just really enjoying the heck out of that process. It was really, really fun. Any like junk or like found objects and that kind of stuff, like drawing that in the background for me is one of my favorite things.
We had another background designer on a few weeks ago. We had Megan Bowman, and I think I said the same thing to her that for me, artistically, I really struggle with backgrounds. So it's like whenever I see like what comes through on regular show, it's like it's the Lord's work.
Yeah, and Megan, she speaking of junk, she probably talked about this, but she got stuck with an episode in the new series where she drew a lot of junk.
Obviously, that was your only contribution to the original series, but of course, you have since returned to be the assistant art director for the Lost Tapes. So, how did that go about? How did you sort of get the call, as it were, to work on that show?
Yeah, that was an interesting one, and not one that I expected. Um, as I mentioned, like Paula and I, their art director, we've kept in touch over the years. We're always like abreast of what each other is doing. We're getting lunch regularly. So at the time, um, this would have been like early 2025 last year. I was in between gigs, actually for the first time ever, because I'm sure as you're aware, animation's in kind of a weird place right now. But up until that point, I had been consistently working, and like people would seek me out, and I hopped around quite a bit. But after I had finished up Nickelodeon, I was there for around 5 years, art directing the Baby Shark series. It ended, and I had a bit of a gap. So Paula knew that I was looking for work. She was potentially considering me for doing background design on the series, but that didn't pan out. They ended up going with some really, really wonderful artists. But lo and behold, um, once the new series started going, it was much bigger and more ambitious, I think, than anyone had anticipated. So Paula was very quickly like just buried in work. So she needed some help. So initially she had me do some background design freelance on some of their first episodes, but then this is kind of sad news, but she was affected by those big fires we had in LA. Unfortunately, like she lost her house in that fire. So like that on top of the complexity that the lost tapes ended up being was like, okay, I'm gonna need somebody to help unbury me from all of this work. And because we'd known each other for so long and I had a lot of art direction experience, she was like, Cheryl's really the only person that I would want to trust with this. which is a real honor because regular show is her baby. Like she has crafted this thing from the very beginning, her and JG. So when she reached out to me and asked, like, could you help with this? I was like, well, of course I'll help with this. I'd be happy to do whatever I can to like be a part of the legacy that's regular show. So in January 2025, took up the mantle as assistant art director and tried to help alleviate as much work as I possibly could.
I kind of have to ask now, like, is Paula okay?
She's okay. Yes, I'm happy to report Paula's doing fine. She's a real tough cookie. She handled everything like a total champ, and everything's good. They're on the path to rebuilding. Um, and yeah, all the work on regular show went pretty smooth. Like once we got that sorted. So yeah, she's doing good. So thank you for asking.
I was in LA a month after the fires. And so everything, like, all of my Uber drivers were just talking about like how their lives have been deeply, like they had like family members getting, like, losing their homes. And
Yeah, yeah, it was such a traumatic and incredible event. Like one of the most impactful things I've experienced since living here in LA is pretty much everybody knows somebody that was impacted in some way. Um, but at the same time, I feel like everybody came together and they did as much as they possibly could to help and support each other at that time. LA is still certainly like picking up the pieces, but we're on our way, rebuilding slowly but surely.
on the topic of Paula, one
Yeah.
thing I did pull out for this interview was the original, the regular show art book. Um, I'm kind of hiding behind that, I guess. Literally, the introduction to this, like they have a bit from JG, and then it instantly goes to Paula. Um, and like I know that she contributed a lot to this book. Like there's just a whole introduction uh, from Paula Spence, and I just wanted to point out that I'm assuming this probably hasn't been discussed, but I would love to see a new edition of it with stuff from the Lost Tapes.
Oh, who knows? If they're working on that, they haven't told me about it, but hopefully that could be considered in the future. Yeah, yeah, because I feel like the last tapes, the Paula wanted the art direction to really feel like a continuation of the original series, which I think it does. But at the same time, it still has a little bit of a new spin to it. Um, And I think a lot of that can be attributed to Sean Zellis, the executive producer we worked really closely with in design, because he had a really important, impactful role in design. And I feel like his taste and his hands were kind of all over the way that the Lost Tapes looks, which gives it a slight different flavor than the original series.
Just for anybody out there who might not be aware, what is it that you do as an assistant art director?
Sure. Yeah, so it really varies per show, and not all shows need an assistant art director. I would say it's somewhat unusual to have one. And usually the reason you do have one is if workloads really start to balloon and people can't do what they normally do on their own. So you need somebody to share the workload with. So in my case, what I was doing specifically on regular show as an assistant art director was really assisting Paula with her daily tasks as much as possible. And some of that would be giving an entire task to me. Some of that would be giving part of a task, or like occasionally I do one thing or another. What that was specifically is I would set up background templates for all of the background designers. So before we have a background designer start to work, we give them the storyboard panel in a Photoshop document with all the text and important technical details they need to know. We'll pull reference for them from stock from the original series, or if it's something that was we had like a preliminary design for, we'd pull that for them. So I'd assemble all of that, so that way we could give those to the background designers, and pretty much they just have to take a look at that, look at the notes in there, go through the reference, look at the storyboards, and then they can really hit the ground running, and they don't have to do too much hunting for stuff. They can really just focus on the design. That was a huge part of my task as an assistant art director. And I also would assign out chunks of the episodes to the artists as well, the background designers. Um, Keeping in mind each artist's preferences, their strengths, how much time they have, who was working on a bigger episode previously, that kind of thing. I did a similar thing with the background painters. initially I didn't start doing that, but over time I realized like, oh, they needed me to help with that too. So I would pull reference for the background painters and kind of talk them through assignments, assign things to them in chunks so they could manage it, and lots of communicating with our production team. The production team on any animated production, they're like the gears that keep us all together and keep us on track. So I need to make sure that they're aware of where the artists are at. I need to make sure that I can anticipate things coming down the pipe that might be like a big episode. Talk to Paula about that, talk to production. Should we get some freelance artists in here for these bigger episodes? Lots and lots of that as an assistant art director. And then also, I'm happy to report that I did a lot of design, background design on the show too. Um, so whenever somebody was overloaded, I would take on backgrounds, or if I felt like, oh, there's this particular sequence that either I'm really interested in or I like to draw, I would take stuff like that. Like I really like doing vehicles, so I would take vehicles on in particular. And I think the way that vehicles are handled on regular show is really specific and I felt like I wanted to sink my teeth into that. It was really fun, technical drawing. Other things I would do is I would do red lines or draw over notes for the artists. I would sit in design reviews with Paula and Sean Sellis and take notes. And then if we needed to do a drawing over the top of the background, I would do that, pass it to the artist. Um, yeah, that's most of what I was doing as an assistant art director and management in animation. Like you never quite know what each day is going to bring. So it wasn't like that every day, but for the most part, that's what it was.
You mentioned doing some backgrounds. I know you posted some backgrounds from Fix That Tape on Instagram.
Yeah, I was excited to get the Cheezers kiosk in my first batch. I'm like, Paula, well, thanks for giving me this very iconic thing from regular show. It it's always fun to dip my toes into design, and it was really fun, even just like gathering reference for the artists because I feel like I was in a unique position on the show. I I did like such a tiny thing on the original series, so I got to enter into this world like with like totally fresh eyes. So like when I'm hunting stuff down for the artists, like every other day I'd be like, you guys did that? And you did that? And wait, you have a horse character that loves to party all the time? And you have like Gary? I learned all about Gary. Like it was just so much stuff that I was uncovering and learning for the first time. And it was like really, really fun. Because the world of regular show is huge. It's ridiculous. It like pushes a lot of boundaries. So like yeah, going into that with fresh eyes was just a real joy and made Lost Tapes super fun.
I'd like to ask what are, aside from the cheeses design, and of course, for the episodes that have come out so far, what would you say have been some of your favorite designs to work with?
On the Lost Tapes, well, there's some that aren't released yet that I really like, but of the ones that have come out, I think Boba Casanova came out already. That was easily one of my favorite episodes of the series, maybe because I'm like I don't really like boba. So when the kaiju asks like why are there balls in it, I also want to know that. But but doing the I got to do a bunch of the Japan cityscapes that were destroyed by the kaiju and the mech. That was really fun. Really, really enjoyed doing that.
It's funny because the majority of that episode like takes place in the park, and then suddenly, I love how there's just a title card that's like, meanwhile in Japan. It's one of those things I just really love about regular show is how easily it does that
Yeah.
shift.
Yeah, and I was kind of surprised they didn't have a ton of reference for Japan, just a little bit from the original series. I kind of expected to have seen more, but there was just a tiny bit. So that cityscape was somewhat uncharted territory for the show. So it was fun to be able to sink my teeth into that.
In a similar vein to that, have you got any favorite episodes? Not necessarily to have worked on, but just in general, whether it be from the new series or from the original series.
Yeah, there's another one that I don't think it's out yet. Um, but there's one coming up very soon that's probably my favorite from the Lost Tapes. And then from the original series, of course, I'm biased. I really like the California King episode. But then The one that lives kind of rent free in my head is one that's very, very early on, and you probably know the name of the episode better than I do. But the one with the coffee bean guy,
Caffeinated concert tickets.
that one, I think about that sequence when they're on the lawnmower like a lot. I don't know why, but it comes up for me all the time. I think it's one of the most hilarious like physical gags I've seen in an animated cartoon when that coffee bean squirts coffee into their mouths from his nipples. Ridiculous. Their eyes get all big, then they get the job done really quickly, and the song, I think Loverboy, the song by Loverboy plays. Yeah, Working for the Weekend. It's great. Really, really great. Like one of the best sequences in like all of TV cartoon history, I'd say.
And I mean, that also somewhat ties into the new series because I was very glad to see that those characters came back.
Yes. Yes, I was surprised too. Yeah, and Good Mitch Viking, right? Also a good one. I like that the dolphin.
Have you got any specific favorite characters from the show?
Oh yeah. Yeah, Muscle Man's definitely my favorite. I love Muscle Man's confidence. 'Cause he's gonna be one of the weirder looking characters on the show. But he's got so much confidence, and I really admire that about Muscle Man. And also the his laugh and his screams and his yelps and all that kind of like physical comedy he does is right up my alley too. I think it's really, really hilarious. And I like how I mean, he could very easily have been like a bully character, but in many ways, he's kind of like, he can be a wise mentor to Rigby and Mordecai in a way that I didn't expect. Um, yeah, that part of him I really like too.
I think that's really what's great about regular show because any sort of stereotypes that are there, it's like, oh no, we're more than that. Like we're still going to dig deeper into these characters. Because I remember there was back in the original series, there was a long period where people really did not like Muscle Man, like fans, uh, because apparently he was getting too many episodes, and I've counted, and he got about 5 episodes in one season, so that's not really that much. But now I think there's been a renaissance, and people are like, oh yeah, no, Muscle Man's great. Uh, he's finally getting the appreciation he deserves.
Agreed, agreed. As a Muscle Man fan, agreed.
Well, I'd like to ask, not just as a assistant art director, but also as with your other work in background design, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges that you face in those roles?
I think in as an assistant art director, one of the biggest challenges is not knowing what each day can bring because you never know. Like fires happen all the time on a production, so you really got to be on your toes. So I think knowing how to act quickly, but then think through something in a way that you're considering all the parts and all the components that go into a decision, um, and then being able to resolve something fast, but not too fast, so you don't break anything, is I think one of the bigger challenges of being an assistant art director. And then the other thing is you're kind of like when you're an assistant AD, you're in between the AD and the artist. So you're in a little bit of a middleman role, and that can be kind of murky sometimes. Knowing like how much authority do I have in this situation? How much do I not have? Like who do I answer to? So navigating that can take a little bit of finesse and nuance and just kind of exploring the boundaries of it as you start. And whenever I take on a role like that, where I'm more of a supportive position, I try to ask a lot of questions, explore the boundaries of the role in like a good and a professional way, and just make sure that I'm doing everything I need to do, not stepping on any toes, but also like not staying too quiet and too passive. And as a background designer, I would say the biggest challenge of a background designer is when you're new, it's just getting that mileage in. It just takes a lot of time and a lot of drawings, like years and years of drawing before you can really feel confident and comfortable drawing almost anything. Because as a background designer, you kind of do it all. Like you're doing props in the background, you're doing big sweeping cityscapes, you're doing organic forests, you might be doing characters, you could draw characters in a portrait, you could draw a statue. So you kind of touch a lot of stuff. And it just takes time to get really comfortable with that. I want to say that I felt comfortable in my skin as a background designer probably like a good year and a half in. And there's still times, even having done this for like 13 years, where I'll encounter something where I'm like, I don't really know how to draw this. You just kind of whittle away at it, do a lot of roughs, check in with other artists, check in with your art director, see how they're feeling about it. And then, when you're happy with it, you turn it in. And if you get notes, great. Then you're getting the feedback that you need. If you didn't get any notes, also great. You knocked it out of the park.
What would you say have been some of your favorite memories of working on the show?
Well, when I worked briefly on the original series, like I really do have like a clear memory of like drawing that background with the TVs in it and like getting into like all the little details and making every TV a little different. And one thing I love about tech or technology on regular show as a design is it has to be from a specific era. So it's like 80s to like early 90s. And like for me, like that's my childhood too. So that part is really, really fun. Like whenever I get to do tech for the show that feels vintage, like I love that. So like I remember specifically like thinking about each TV and how it's gonna look. So like that's a fond memory for me. Um and then I think on the Lost tapes, like but the early days of starting and working with Paula and Sean and a little bit with JG, like really getting to know like this epic show that is regular show and feeling like I get to be a small piece of it was really exciting too. Especially early on and like digging through stuff and like I said, seeing like characters that I didn't know, backgrounds that I know, stories that I didn't know. I think I'll probably always remember that and I'm happy that I get to be a part of it. Really proud of the work that I've done on it.
Well, obviously, you've worked on beyond regular show, as you mentioned, a bunch of other shows. I know for Cartoon Network, you also worked on Apple and Onion.
Mhm.
Compared to the other shows that you've worked on, how does regular show compare to those other shows in terms of like your creative process and how you approach everything?
Yeah, that one, that's a big question because I've been on so many different shows and every show is like really, really unique. And they feel really different. Um, and it really depends on like the role you have on it too. So with this one, because I was an assistant AD and like so much of the original series existed and we refer to it like there's not a whole lot of like big creative threads to pull or change or pivot. So I think what felt different about this one was really learning the ins and outs of the original series and adapting to that. And also adapting to the way that they had ran the show for 8 seasons before I was on it. So I'm sure you're aware, but most of the people on the Lost tapes are the same people that were on the original series. So when you work together for 8 seasons, that many years, like they've got a groove, they've got a process they like to follow. So the challenge for me was, okay, how do I fit myself into this so that I can be helpful, but also like not get in the way? Um, And that was really unique and different about working on regular show is adapting to that. And then as a whole, the production on the Lost tapes had to adjust itself because previously it was under Cartoon Network. And Cartoon Network has a really specific way of running their productions. And the Lost Tapes is under Cartoon Network, but it's also under the larger umbrella of Warner Brothers Animation. And that's a little different than how Cartoon Network was running things. So there was some growing pains there too that I had to adjust to, that I was able to help with. And that was the unique part about working on regular show, The Lost Tapes too. Um, but yeah, a rewarding one. I feel like at the end, at the very end, we felt like, okay, we've got this thing under control. We know how to make an episode. It almost felt like season one of a new series all over again, which is kind of crazy to say because this thing has tens of thousands of designs. Not like everyone they know how to make a regular show episode, but there was times where we were like, do we know how to make a regular show episode? It feels like we're doing it again from scratch. I think that's to be expected whenever you reboot something and you kind of do it under a different system than you were doing it before. But yeah.
I'd kind of like to ask who artistically, who or what are some of your biggest inspirations to do the work that you do?
Well, if I go way, way, way back when I was a kid, I was a huge fan of The Lion King. I'm still a huge fan of The Lion King. That's actually I feel like a big inspiration for me as an artist. Like, I love that movie and I loved all the characters on it, loved the songs. Okay, the Lion King takes up a lot of real estate in my brain still. Um, Artists that were an inspiration to me younger. I really love Chris Sanders and his work on Lilo and Stitch and the work that he continues to do. I feel like I had done a lot of copies of his work as a student and a young artist. And there's like a little bit of a flair to some of my stuff there that I think references what he does. Um, and now a lot of my inspiration as an artist comes from observing the world around me, observing nature. I love to go to the zoo and do animal drawings. Um, I used to do a lot of cafe sketching and sketching people, which is something I need to get back into, but like just observing the world around me and coming up with stories from that. So when I do personal projects, I try to look at things through that lens. Um, yeah. Yeah, I like to say if I could get away with like only drawing animals for the rest of my career, I would try.
I mean, I'm glad you actually just mentioned my two favorite Disney movies.
Oh, Lilo and Stitch and Lion King.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
especially The Lion King. Um, there's another one. I mean, obviously you're the person getting interviewed here, but I've never answered this question before. Another, I don't know if it's here. I have it on VHS like here somewhere, but I don't want to spend time going through that. There's a film, Anime Olympics.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I know that
I've
one.
got it on VHS, and I rediscovered it, and I watched it, and I was like, oh my god, this is incredible.
Yeah.
Like how the visuals match with the soundtrack to it, and it's just like I could full on just put this on repeat and never get tired of it because the way everything moves is like so fluid, and I love just all the work on that.
That is a good one. Oh, I'll have to rewatch it. I actually have a piece that I did a few years ago that's like kind of tangentially inspired by that. It's like a scene of a bunch of cheetahs that are about to run a marathon. And they've got their little vests on and their little numbers. And in the background, there's like a hippo staring at them with his number. And he's like much bigger than them. So he's a little bit like, huh, what am I doing? But I remember thinking about that film when I was working on that piece. Um, oh, thank you for reminding me that that exists.
Yeah, I'd completely forgot till I found it on VHS, and I was like,
Yeah, yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. And you're right, the animation is really good. I remember there's a sequence of there's two athletes. I don't remember. I think one's a lion. I don't know what the other one is. Maybe a kangaroo or a horse or something. Like they like run together.
yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we are starting to head towards the end of the interview, but I would like to ask for anybody out there who might want to get into the industry, whether it be in animation or just in art in general, what sort of advice would you like to give to any of those people?
Yeah, I'd say as many of us know, like the animation industry, especially the big studios, are kind of in a weird funk right now. Where less things are being greenlit. It feels like there's less jobs than ever. Things are moving around constantly. Um, it seems like the studios pick like a new outsourced du jour spot. Like every year it's changing. So what I would say to people that want to get into the industry is don't sweat that. The most important thing to do right now is to do work for you. Do your own projects because if you find meaning in what you're working on, like it'll show in the work. And if it's something that has meaning to you, you also put a lot of work into it and grow with it. In fact, I've been doing exactly that with some colleagues from Baby Shark. We've got a whole side project that we've been working on called Boogie Birds, and that has been one of the most fulfilling things that I've done. So any young artists out there right now who have like concerns about getting a job or getting into the industry, really focus on your own projects because that's going to be what gets you noticed. It's going to be something that's fulfilling. It's something that's fun, and it's also really good practice to work on something on your own and like implement your own schedule and be your own boss and be accountable to yourself. Maybe you get a group of friends together and you all work on it together and you're accountable to each other and you help inspire each other. It really is, I think, one of the best times to be doing that because things are changing so much. Like things are exploding on YouTube right now in a way that I haven't seen before so far working in animation. And the studios are taking notice. And I think that's going to change what the future of this industry looks like 2, 5, 10 years from now. So it really is a great time to like do personal projects.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I would say get to know your neighbors because I got into this industry because Paula was my neighbor. And if I hadn't got to know her, then I don't know where I'd be right now. So definitely get to know your neighbors.
That's great. And before I let you go, I'd like to ask, is there, aside from the Lost Tapes, is there anything that you've been working on that's come out recently or that's coming up that you'd like to promote?
Yeah, definitely Boogie Birds. Boogie Birds is a preschool series that myself and a bunch of folks from the Baby Shark series on Nickelodeon have been developing on the side. It's totally indie. We're a really tiny team of just 8 people, and we've been building it from the ground up. And it's fun, educational musical videos for kids featuring 4 adorable birds characters. All the design was done by yours truly, and I also designed all the merch, which was super fun. Yeah, we're hoping that it will be kind of an antidote to some of the not so great stuff on YouTube. Like it's made by professionals, it's cute, it's fun, it's also kind of low stimulation, it's got catchy songs, and it's educational. So check out Boogie Birds on YouTube.
And if anyone wants to find more of your work or just find you on social media, where can they do that?
They can find me on Instagram. I'm at CBJ Art. And you can also check out my work on my website, which is cbjart.space, as in outer space or square space.
Well, Cheryl, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Jordan, for having me. It's been so fun to talk about my career and regular show. And yeah, it's been awesome. Thanks.
Thank you once again to Cheryl Johnson for joining us for this interview. If you'd like to see more of her work, then make sure you follow her at CBJ Art across social media. All of her links will be in the description. Next time, we will be speaking to Ryan Pequin, a storyboard artist who boarded on the original show from seasons 5 to 8 and has since returned to board for the Lost Tapes. Here's a preview.
It happens so often where you pitch something that you really like, you're like proud of it. You're like, because I know I stayed up and I like really tried to tinker with that until it felt really, really solid. And it's kind of like this long sequence where they're flying and they're talking about their feelings and it's like really heartfelt. And then yeah, and then JG's like, nah, it'll work better if you just keep that super quick.